It's not necessarily difficult to make $1 million. Now, according to a post I recently read on Financial Samurai, given that the median US household income is around $68,000, it takes the typical household 14.7 years to earn $1 million. But earning and keeping that $1 million, as in seeing $1 million in your bank account, that is a whole other story. Today, I'm going to share with you the 7 skills that I needed to develop and employ on a daily basis in order to put my first $1 million in the bank, as well as how long it took me to get there, starting from a net worth of $0. I'm Rachel Harrison-Sun, and I help people just like you build and scale a sustainable online business to 6 figures and beyond. Now, the great thing about skills is that they are not innate talents, meaning that they can be learned by most people. Now, yes, some of us have to work a little bit harder than others to acquire certain skills, but significant improvement in all of the areas that we're going to talk about today is totally doable for you. Now, the first skill is financial literacy. And this really is an umbrella term that includes things like financial education, tracking, planning, and really this is your foundation on which you're going to build any sort of financial wealth. And it's always ongoing. You're really never done with this whole financial literacy thing. So there tends to be this misconception that wealthy people have access to all sorts of knowledge and tools that the average Joe really doesn't have, but that's not accurate. Now, I'm not talking about hedge funds where, there's a minimum investment of $1 million or something like that, but that's not what you need to make your first or even your first $10 million. Now, the truth is that many wealthy people tend to spend their time with other wealthy people. They often have wealthy parents, wealthy friends, wealthy spouses, wealthy colleagues. This means that by default, they tend to have greater access to financial knowledge just by way of constantly being around people that have this financial knowledge and being able to pick their brain and sit down and ask questions and things like that. Now, conversely, if you grew up in a household where you didn't have a lot of money, your parents probably weren't able to provide you with any of that information because no one provided it to them. And you probably socialized with and even worked alongside other people from a similar socioeconomic background. I was never really taught how to budget or save, let alone how to invest. We were a working class family, and like a lot of working class families, there was a lot more of a focus on just survival rather than building wealth. And I certainly wasn't rolling in, wealthy social circles either. It's really only been like over the last 5 years or so after entering this entrepreneurial space that I've started meeting more and more wealthy people and including them in my social circle. And the conversations around money are completely different to the conversations about money than I was used to having before. And, consequently, I've learned a lot more about how to manage my finances, how to invest, how to leverage the tax system in my favor, all of these things that I just didn't have any awareness of before. Now, if you currently don't have anyone in your life that's financially educated in these ways, you can of course investigate things for yourself online and through books, which we should all be doing anyways. This is something that I've done a lot of over the years because, like I said, I just really didn't have anyone to talk to in my personal circle for a very long time about any of these things. Now, you also want to be doing some financial tracking. So, like Peter Drucker said, what gets measured gets managed. So first, you want to start with a total financial audit. Now, lots of people who are struggling financially, they don't want to be reminded of how much they're struggling. So they tend to stick their head in the sand, basically just try to ignore the situation. This was me for most of my life. But you can't even create a goal unless you know where your starting point is. Now, if you know it's bad, you're going to want to brace yourself. So the first time I sat down and figured out my net worth was minus $45,000. That meant that I had to come up with $45,000 just to have a net worth of $0. That was so depressing. But, at least I knew at that point where I stood and I could go about creating a goal and a plan on how to get to that goal. So look at all of your accounts, then determine your net worth. So net worth is your assets, so checking, savings accounts, any investment accounts you have, any property you might own, and then you want to subtract your liabilities, so credit card debt, loans, mortgage if you have one, And the number that you're left with, that's your net worth. And you want to review your net worth regularly. I tend to do this at least once a month. And of course, knowing your net worth is going to be able to help you to track how much more you've got left before you reach your goal of generating $1 million and having that net worth of $1 million. And of course, your net worth is going to be what tells you that you are now worth $1 million. So you absolutely have to know this figure. Next, you want to create a budget and you want to track your spending religiously with the aim of course, creating a positive cash flow, meaning that you've got more money coming in than you have going out each month. I like to use software for this just to make it easy. I use Monarch, but there are a lot of other options out there that you can check out online. Now, when you start tracking your spending, you might naturally end up decreasing any mindless spending that you're doing. So when my husband and I had our son about 4 years ago, things got really hectic around here, and one of the first things to slip was that no one was doing this tracking anymore. You know, our app was still tracking stuff, but we weren't actually going in and looking at it. So a few months went by. Then I went into the app and I was absolutely horrified to see how much money we'd been spending for months on end on groceries and eating out. If we hadn't started tracking that again, we probably would have kept on that same trajectory, literally wasting thousands of dollars over the course of the year. And of course, this is money that we could have plunked into our kids' college funds or our own retirement funds or something like that. Now, once you've done your audit and you know the full picture of your finances, it's time to create that plan. Set your goals. Where do you want to be by this time next year or in 3 years? What's your plan to get there? Will you save? Will you invest? Do you need to cut back on spending in any areas? Can you stop spending in one area and use that money that you've saved to fund a savings goal? Okay, skill number 2 is leveraging. Now, leveraging really is just about making the most out of your available resources, and I think most of us can probably be doing a much better job at it. Now, there are different types of leverage. There's leveraging money, but there's also leveraging time, relationships, opportunities, achievements, talents, skills, education. And this is a skill that's really ongoing for me. I don't think I did the best job of making the most out of most of these things in the beginning. But here's what I did do and how it helped me to make that first million. When I had decided to create my own business, I leveraged my existing skills and interests. So writing skills, love of books, my background in advertising and design, video editing, presentation skills, communication skills. I leaned really heavily on all of these skills to get my business off the ground, which was how I was able to make more money, which was how I was able to reach that goal of making my first $1 million. I also leveraged my money, small amount that it was, by regularly investing and reinvesting the profits that I was making in my business back into my business. I leveraged tools and other people's time, hiring help in order to essentially duplicate myself and get more done in a shorter amount of time, which expedited me on my journey towards my first million. I leveraged the growing demand for low content books and the growing demand for knowledge on how to create low content books, which led me to my first successful digital course, which contributed a lot to my first $1 million. And now that I'm meeting more and more people in this online world, I can start leveraging those new relationships more as well. So when I actively help these people out with no expectation of help from them in return, they are naturally more likely to offer help to me somewhere down the line. And now that I'm starting to get featured in the media, like in Forbes and in Money and Applied Arts, I can start leveraging those appearances and features to help create credibility and trust. Both things that, if leveraged in the right way, can help me to make more money. So think about what you have in terms of skills and money, time, relationships, education, talents, achievement, and think about how you can leverage those things to advance your financial goal of making your first $1 million. Skill number 3 is risk-taking. Now, anyone who's made $1 million from scratch is going to tell you that you have to get used to taking some calculated risks. Now, this could be a financial risk. So for example, I chose not to find a new job after I was laid off from the advertising agency, even though I wasn't quite making enough money to fully support myself yet. And this is because the trajectory that I was on told me that I would likely be there soon, and eventually be making more money than if I was to get another 9-to-5 job. This could also be a social risk. So, putting yourself out there. I'm an introvert. I don't like the spotlight. It was never my plan to start a YouTube channel. I felt super cringy about being seen on video. Doing my first live webinar, I thought I was gonna literally pass out from anxiety. And then when I launched my first digital course, I just pictured angry customers showing up at my front door with pitchforks. Or your risk could just be trying something new when you don't know if it's gonna work out. Oftentimes, you have to dedicate quite a lot of time and effort to something without enjoying any immediate success. It took me 9 months to create my first course. Now, I thought it would sell, but there was no guarantee. But the possibility was enough to keep me going. And all of these risks I'm telling you about here, I had to take them all to make my business a success. There was just no way around it. And of course, without my business, there was no way I could have made my first $1 million without working at a job, saving and investing for the next several decades, or just winning the lottery. And the best thing that you can do when it comes to risk taking is just learn how to mitigate any risks as well as you can. So think through the worst case scenario of whatever it is you're thinking about doing, and then just create a backup plan for if things don't work out the way that you want them to. This is going to give you a real sense of control and of peace of mind that you will be able to move past any setbacks that you have, and you are going to have a few of them. Skill number 4 is patience, and this one can be so tough. Most of us, definitely me included, never feel like we're making progress at the rate we should be making progress. And most of the people that we look up to online make us feel like they achieved success overnight, but of course they didn't. Now, what helps me stay patient is to know that if I just keep moving forward in the right direction, I'm gonna get where I'm trying to go eventually. Now, I also focus on continuing to improve my process, so the means by which I plan on getting to my destination, rather than focusing on actually getting to the destination. And this, ironically, actually will improve your chances of getting to your destination in the quickest way possible. Remember that even if it takes 10 years to reach a goal, like making your first $1 million, after 5 of those years, wouldn't you rather be halfway there than where you are right now? Because you never even started. Now, it takes most of us a significant amount of time to make a significant amount of money, get that money in the bank when we're starting from meager beginnings. But that doesn't mean it's not worth staying the course. I had to be very patient with my saving and investment efforts. It felt like it was taking forever to get where I was going, but I didn't want to blow those efforts by becoming so impatient then that, rather than put the chunk of money that I wanted to put into the bank account each month, just going and blowing that on a totally new wardrobe or, $5,000 on a trip to Mexico or something like that. But it did take patience, because when you're putting only a few $100s or a few $1,000s into your bank account at a time, it feels like it's going to take forever to reach that goal. So patience is key. Skill number 5 is positive self-talk, which is basically your inner dialogue that thankfully no one else can hear. Now, this probably isn't something that you really think about when it comes to the habits you would need to get to your first $1 million, but it is our self-talk that drives all of our beliefs about ourselves, including whether or not we're ever going to be realistically able to reach a big goal, like putting $1 million in the bank without winning the lottery. Now, that inner voice of ours holds a lot of power, and we tend to believe everything that inner voice tells us. I had to believe that I was capable of digging myself out of $45,000 worth of debt, and then somehow generating and keeping $1 million, even though at the time I was only making $45,000 a year. And for me to believe that, I had to tell myself daily that I would find a way, that I was capable, that if other people, oftentimes people that were in much more dire financial situations than me, had figured it out, so could I. That's positive self-talk, and this is why it matters. And we really do have to train ourselves to be aware of our self-talk, because we spend most of our day really not being aware of it. Now, when you catch yourself engaging in negative self-talk, stop yourself and then counter it with something positive. This is going to increase your motivation. It's going to give you that positive mindset that you're going to need to reach all of your goals, no matter what they are. Now, yes, of course, you can make money while having poor self-talk, whipping yourself to the finish line, but would you like to have money and be happy, or just have the money? Skill number 6 is focus. Now, this is really important when you're going after something, to train your focus onto just one thing and deliberately exclude almost everything else. The fewer goals that you have, the likelier that you're going to be to achieve those goals. The fewer projects you take on, the likelier you're going to be to finish and have success with those projects. The fewer distractions you have in your life, the likelier you're going to be able to be focused on the few things that matter. This is something that does tend to come naturally to me, mainly because it's basically impossible for me to juggle multiple projects at once without becoming immediately overwhelmed. Now, if you're deliberately trying to make more money, which you're going to need to do in order to make your first $1 million before retirement, it's really hard to do it if your focus is divided between multiple businesses or multiple offers in one business, or even just too many different non-revenue generating projects in your business. You got to pick one thing and you have to stick with it. Now, you can broaden your horizons later, but you really can't do it in the beginning. If building financial success isn't as important to you as pursuing multiple things at once, that's totally fine. But if it is important, you have to get laser focused. And when you're laser focused, it's much easier to make some of those necessary sacrifices that sometimes have to be made. You might need to work early mornings or evenings or on weekends. If you have a day job like I did, I was up at 6 a.m. working for 2 hours before heading to my day job at the ad agency. I was there from 9 to 5, then I would get home, and then I'd go back into my office between like 8 and 10, and I'd work some more. Now, I want to point out that I had no kids at the time, so that was really doable for me. My priorities have shifted dramatically since then, as of course my family is now my main priority, but I still do need to make some sacrifices occasionally. I actually had to go back into my office here last night for a couple hours just to prepare for this shoot for this video today. I also tend to say no to a lot of social engagements at this point because when I'm not working, I want to either be with my family or just rejuvenating, so I've got time to try and perform at my best while I'm here in my office. So those are some of the current sacrifices I'm making and some of the ones that you might have to make for yourself as well. And of course, your level of sacrifice is completely up to you. The more of your life you sacrifice, the more money you might be able to make, but only you can determine what level of sacrifice is going to be really worth it to you. Skill number 7 is perseverance, and this is probably the most important skill on this list. And I think a lack of perseverance is why most people give up prematurely, even if they're generally on the right track. Now, I don't care what anyone says, succeeding at anything is hard. Making your first million is going to be hard. And we are definitely not all starting from the same starting line with the same existing skills and the same existing resources. It's going to take much longer for some of us than for others to reach that goal. And there are always going to be setbacks along the way. After a few years of working toward our first million, there was a market crash in 2018, and we watched in horror as tens of thousands of dollars just started evaporating from our slowly growing investment portfolio. It felt really scary, and we had no idea how long it was going to take for this to bounce back. But when you know to expect setbacks, it's much easier to persevere. Okay, so how long did it actually take me? From the time I declared my net worth as $0 to the time I declared my net worth $1 million, it took me roughly 5 years. 5 years of using all of those skills we just talked about on a daily basis. And I think this is a realistic time frame for anyone who's motivated and dedicated to finding a way to make more money, save more money, and then invest more money. And the fastest way to make more money is by starting your own business. So if you want a complete high-level framework that takes you from an online business idea all the way through to a successful launch, you can download my free 6-figure online business startup blueprint down in the description below. Like I said earlier, there is simply no way I would have made my first million without making it in my business. And if you want to know exactly where you should focus your time and efforts in the first stage of your business so that you can start making money as quickly as possible, check out what to focus on the first week of starting an online business by clicking this video right here. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.